Hello everyone and welcome back to your year of tarot. You are on lesson 5, and in this lesson we are building up our fundamental knowledge of the tarot by adding in some numerology. Numerology can add in another dimension to your readings or act as a easy prompt for remembering a little bit of extra detail about what the card means. It's something that you can take or leave in the tarot, but understanding it can give you a more well-rounded knowledge of a card and why it is how it is. So if you want to know what the significance is of a 1 or a 4 or a 7 in the tarot, let's dive in. Let's go over a very brief explanation about what numerology is. Historically, numerology was called arithmancy. If you remember all the way back to lesson 1 when we talked about the history of tarot and divination, you'll remember that when a word ends in mancy, it's normally a kind of divination. So arithmancy is divination with numbers or arithmetic. The first record we have of this word comes from the 1500s. It wasn't called numerology until the 1900s. This is a word that comes much later. So in historical texts, you're more likely to see arithmancy than numerology. But it is a practice that has existed for thousands of years across multiple different cultures and has developed in its own ways. There is not a central starting point or a central civilization or culture that used numerology first. It pretty concurrently developed around the world. Prior to even arithmancy, we had gematria. The first record we have of this word and this practice being used is in the 8th century BCE. So it is something that we've been doing for a very, very long time. Gematria through to arithmancy to numerology, the practice and the reasons for using it have changed over the years. So the modern interpretations and the modern look at numerology is very different to its historical counterparts, but the through line and kind of the intention is the same. Overall, numerology is the connection between a number and either a metaphysical property or a symbolic archetype or trait. There are many different forms of numerology all over the world. As it began in so many different places, there are so many different ways of doing it, but there are 3 main systems that you will see today in conjunction with the tarot. One of the main schools of numerology that you will see around esoteric circles today is the Pythagorean school of numerology. Pythagorean numerology was created by Pythagoras, the famous philosopher, mathematician, polymath, and Pythagoras believed that numbers explained the true nature of the universe. In Pythagoreanism and Pythagorean philosophy, numbers became attached to intangible concepts. They existed separate to the world, but they governed human existence. So numbers were something that were more than us, but had a guiding force, and the natural connections between numbers and us were guiding forces in our lives. The next system is the I Ching. The I Ching is not strictly numerology. It's a lot more than that, and it's incredibly complex, but it does have a numerology component to it. So you'll see a lot of it in esoteric circles, particularly modern New Age circles. The I Ching is a really interesting mix of philosophy, divination, esoterica, and on the most basic, grossly oversimplified level, it is a system of 64 hexagrams that look a bit like this, that are created through drawing yarrow sticks traditionally, or flipping coins, or pulling marbles out of a bag. These different hexagrams have different interpretations for everyday life, for new projects, relationships, etc. You can use these hexagrams to gain insight and act as a divinatory system. The third most common system you'll see associated with the tarot is the Kabbalah. The Jewish system of the Kabbalah is a form of gematria, as we mentioned previously. It is a very old system, a kind of precursor to numerology. This is where a numerical value is attached to a word or a name because individual characters have a number associated with them. So it would add up to make a number, and then connections would be made between similar numbers. If two different words, like wine and secret, have the same numbers attached to them, it would say that secrets are revealed when wine is involved. That's a very, very broad overview of what the Kabbalah actually is. It's incredibly complex, and it's still used today. Gematria exists within the Kabbalah, but is not the whole of the Kabbalah. It's just a component of it. These are the three most common systems that you're going to come up against when you are researching the tarot itself. They're not the only ones that exist. There's no one that's better than the other or more important than the other, but it's just to be aware of that when you're doing your own research into the tarot and you're looking at numerology, you're going to get different things because of these different systems that exist. These three systems are incredibly complex. There is a lot in them. So I'm going to leave links in the description below if you want to go on a bit of a deep dive, if this is a topic that you were interested in. But those overviews are all you kind of really need to know for the rest of learning tarot. Numerology in tarot does depend on the deck you've got. Some of the associations with the numbers will seem more common to you, some will seem a little bit far-fetched. Some numerical meanings will change because of culture. If in a specific culture the number 9 is really unlucky, it will have a different connotation to what the general tarot number for it will mean. There's a lot that goes into it, and you can take it as you want. It's one of those things that you can add a layer to your reading. It shouldn't detract from it or make it more complicated. Throughout the rest of this lesson and the course in general, we are going to be using the Pythagorean system of numerology. There are a few notable exceptions to this rule, but we'll go over them as we get to them, as not to confuse you too early on. They make sense in context. The Pythagorean associations of the numbers in tarot have been changed from their historical counterparts. Meanings change over time. The strict meanings that might be attached to a Pythagorean number won't mean the same thing in modern tarot. I'm going to give you the modern interpretations of what these numbers are, the most up-to-date ones, but as you start getting different decks, more niche decks, historical systems of numerology might become slightly more important. But we're going to stick in with the Pythagorean system of numerology. But let's look at numerology in the pip cards. The pip cards in tarot are one of the easiest places to see numerology in action. This is the 1 to 10 cards of the 4 main suits, with 1 to 10 each having a different meaning attached to the number. Numerology, in this sense, can be a very helpful tool for remembering the base ideas of the card or deciphering the meaning of the card. It can act as a nice way to just help you remember the cards and the overall meaning if that's something that you're struggling with. Let's start with number 1. These are the ace cards in your deck, and they represent unity, new beginnings, and potential. This is also the purest form of the element. It is the start of something new. Let's look at 2. 2 is balance, duality, cooperation, decision making. It's that idea of having two polar opposites and trying to make them one whole. 3 can be more groups or groupings. It can also be development. Largely is about expression as well. So that beginning to build on something, that need and desire to express yourself, and how you have relationships with others. 4 is structure, stability, endurance. Think of the 4 elements. Think of a square with its 4 sides. Think of a house. That's an easy way to use it. It's a solid foundation. It's creating something stable that lasts. It's also a sense of security around the number 4. 5 is conflict. 5 is change. It's challenge. It's fluctuating. Think of 5 as your plot twist card. So things are heading on a pretty steady path, and then kind of right at the middle at 5, it's like something is going to change your path. Something is or just has changed your path, and you're feeling a little bit all over the place. 6 is harmony. It's commitment. It's being in alignment with your goals. I like to think of 6 as those 2 train tracks traveling next to each other. You are going somewhere, you are making progress, and you're feeling pretty balanced as you're doing it. 7 is introspection. It is reflective. It is investigative. With 7s, without going and looking for the new, you are flipping it back round and looking inward. Am I doing the thing that I actually want to be doing, or am I doing the thing because I feel like I should be doing it? 8 is achievement. 8 is perfection. Normally this comes as a result of introspection. This is also a card of gratitude for everything that you already have. 9 is that you're on the last few steps of something. That final push, that point where you might feel like now is the time to put something down and give it up, and what do you need to push through that? It's abundance, it's attainment, but it's also attunement. Are you in attunement with the goal that you're trying to achieve, that thing that's about to come next? And then we have 10. 10 is completion. 10 is that ending of a project, ending of a cycle and starting a new one. 10 is your full circle moment, that growth that has already happened, and that moment that you can kind of sit in the growth that you've had, but be ready that you're about to take your next journey. Let's take the example of the 2 of Swords. From last week's lesson in the elements, we know that the swords, the suit of swords, are an air element card. So what are we looking at with the air element? We know that we're looking at thoughts, intellect, communication, conflict. It's that very being in your head kind of element, that planning and thinking forward. So if you know that about the element already, take what you've just heard about the number 2. So 2 is cooperation, decisions, duality, balance. So take a minute and write down what you think the possible explanations are for the 2 of Swords without looking at the 2 of Swords. Just from the number 2 and its numerological associations and the element of air. Just time yourself for 1 minute, pause this video, and then come back. Okay, there are a few possible interpretations of this card, but when we look at the 2 of Swords, what do we actually see and what do we get from our meaning? For the 2 of Swords, we have got a blindfolded figure holding 2 crossed swords above their chest. We're not going to go fully into unpicking this card. That's coming up in a lesson very soon. But let's take a brief overview just using the elements and the numerology. You can see that this figure is blindfolded. They cannot see the options in front of them. They cannot see the options behind them, but they're holding those crossed swords. So it's indecision because they're not willing to look forward. They're not willing to look backward or around. If 2 is duality, then looking at this card with 2 crossed swords is that decision making. It's a card though that is very in balance. There isn't a lot of turbulence in this. It's fairly calm seas. So if someone is feeling in balance but has to make a decision, this often is indicating something that someone has to give up. So the blindfold is on because they're hesitant at making that decision. You can see that the sea is calm. You can see that there's no turbulence around her. So in terms of intellect, this has to be a well thought out decision, but they don't want to see almost the outcome of it. It's a nice thought exercise, if you're commuting at all or just walking to work, is to pick an element, pick a number without looking at the card and just try and piece it together. What does a 1 mean in the context of water? What does an 8 mean in the context of earth? What does a 7 mean in the context of fire? Thinking about these kind of things are already going to give you a really good understanding of unpicking numerology and elements before we've even got to the cards. This will already inform your understanding of the cards. Now we're going to look at numerology in the major arcana. It gets slightly more complicated here, not by much, I promise. The 1 to 10s are fairly simple. Some systems of numerology will only use 1 to 9. Some, the 10 doesn't exist. That is for a very interesting reason. That is because of the blending of different numerological concepts in kind of modern esoteric practice. So in Pythagorean numerology, 0 is an imperfect number and doesn't exist. In some systems, not Pythagorean, 10 doesn't exist because there's a 0 in it. it just becomes 1 again. But Pythagoras believed that 10 was a perfect number, so he did use it in his form of numerology. So this is again one of those places where you're going to start seeing conflicting things. However, we do have a 0 in the tarot deck. The first card of the major arcana, the Fool, is numbered as 0. Well, why is that? What does a 0 mean? If 1 is a new beginning, can 0 also be a new beginning? The 0 is infinity. It's that dreaming stage before you even take a step into or away from something. It's that point of playing it all out in your head, all of the wonderful things that could happen before starting the journey. So with the Fool, with the 0, it's infinite possibility. And that is what we use that for. When it comes to the rest of the numbers in the major arcana, the 1 to the 10s, you can use exactly the same as the pip cards. After that is when it changes, and you are going to find different places will explain how to use those double-digit numbers in multiple ways. I'm going to give you a few ways to do it. In some aspects of numerology, if you've got a doubled number, so an 11, or going further, like a 22 or 33, it's often the numerological meaning of the single digit, but at a much greater intensity, like a markedly different level of intensity. And this comes up as a key component in a reading. So you can choose to do that for your double numbers. Sometimes in numerology, those 2-digit numbers especially are split into their component digits, and then those are added together to make one of the base numbers. Some places won't use an 11, they would use a 1 plus a 1, which is 2. So then the 11 would have the same meaning as 2. So for example, 13, which is the devil, would be a 1 and a 3, which is 4. So you're looking at stability, foundations. So you'd be using the same numerological meaning as the base numbers. 10 is one of those examples as well. As we mentioned earlier, in some systems it's not used at all. So that is the point where they would add a 1 and a 0 and 10 would become 1. Another way to use the larger numbers in the tarot is to cycle through the 1 to 9 and then basically start again. Or the 1 to 10 and then basically start again. 1 and 11 would be the same card. 2 and 12. 3 and so on and so forth, even when you get into the 20s. They basically align the digits of the number. You can also basically use it as a dual meaning card. If you have the number 15, for example, you've got start of a new journey, the 1, and then you've got the 5, which is our plot twist kind of card, right? So it could mean that you're starting a new journey, but in a way that's very different to what you thought you were going to do and the way you thought it was going to be. It's that plot twist kind of moment, but in conjunction with a new beginning. You can pick whichever form works best for you. I like to use the kind of combination numbers version. So I will use the 0 as the infinity, the 1 to 10 as is. I use 11 to mean the doubling down. And then I use the components to inform the meaning. So I use the 15 as the 1 and the 5. You can pick whichever way you want to use it. You can pick not to use it. It is completely up to you. But you are going to see a lot of conflicting information, and there's no set numerological meaning for the major arcana. As we go through the individual cards, I will give you my numerological interpretation, plus I'll give you the number down to its component parts as another numerological component that you can choose to take it as. Don't get caught up in the weeds. Don't get worried about it. It's something that can enhance your practice. It shouldn't hold your practice back. If you don't find it helpful, don't use it. This week's homework is nice and simple, and it's something that I think is quite fun. I quite like doing it, and my husband likes doing this. But you're going to find your personal year card in the major arcana. This is a card that you find using numerology. So this is your big overarching card for the year. This is saying that these are going to be the main opportunities for growth that are going to come up for you, your main theme of the year. And this is how you do it. You are going to take the digits from your date of birth and add them to the digits of the current year. So what does that look like? If you were born on the 1st of October and the year is 2026, you are adding 1 plus 1 plus 0, plus 2, plus 0, plus 2, plus 6. 1st of the 10th, 2026. This equals 12. And the card numbered 12 in the major arcana is the Hanged Man. So in numerology, the Hanged Man is your card for the year. If you get to a number that is higher than 21, because that is the highest that the major arcana goes to, you then add those two component numbers together. So if I had a 23, I'd add a 2 and a 3, it's 5, and I would use 5 of the major arcana. Have a look at whether or not that card has influenced your year so far, or what type of things would you be looking out for moving forward? What can you learn from this major arcana card? And put something, either the card itself or a representation of that card, just somewhere that you look at every day. I have a tiny, for example, like crystal magician, and if I was to draw the magician, I would put that on my altar or my windowsill as a representation of the magician. You can use whatever you want. It's just a fun little thing to do. I like doing it. So let me know what your personal year card is for the major arcana. Mine will be going up on Patreon very shortly. And next week, we will begin our introduction of the minor arcana, like a real introduction to the cards. The following weeks after that, we are going to be unpicking the minor arcana in depth. The minor arcana take up the bulk of the deck. It's important that you know these cards and the patterns of them and how to start reading them. Next week's lesson will go through the overview of the minor arcana and what we are going to do, how the minor arcana lessons are structured moving forward, and we're going to get you reading some tarot. So you've done really well to get the foundation and the basics of tarot down in these first 5 weeks. And I will see you next week for the introduction to the minor arcana. Bye guys.